I'm going to do something that is rarely done on this show. I'm going to address some of the local fare. This is a local comic, a Las Vegas comic by the name of Patrick Melton. He has a comedy podcast called Nobody Likes Onions. And he's chiming in on abortion. I want to show how some of these right-wing talking points have a tendency to trickle down. And I also want to address the title of this podcast. It's called Nobody Likes Onions, and everybody likes onions. Onions are in pizzas, salads, sandwiches, all different types of wieners. Onions are the Nicolas Cage of vegetables. Everybody will talk about how awful they are, and yet somehow they're everywhere you look.
We have to learn to find a balance in society. One of the ways we can do that in this country is by allowing states to decide.
We had a balance in this country for 50 years. It was called Roe v. Wade. It allowed abortions in the first trimester. After those first 24 weeks, abortion procedures become heavily regulated. This is how the federal government could prevent certain states from forcing 10-year-old girls to make babies, like what happened in Ohio. But Patrick, he wants to make his argument, and let's see if he can make his argument for states' rights. And let's see if he can do an impression of a talking dog.
What the fuck are you saying? There are so many levels of restriction. It's unfair culturally to think that people in Kentucky are going to find acceptable what people in LA find acceptable.
People in Kentucky and people in LA have a tendency to find the same things acceptable. For one reason, people in Kentucky have a tendency to move to LA. For example, Larry Flynt. The majority of the people who live in Kentucky right now support Roe v. Wade, including the governor. Unfortunately, Kentucky is so gerrymandered, they have a virtually unelected Republican legislature that wants to force 10-year-old girls into making babies. And by the way, some might argue that abortions on kids are rare. Well, if by rare you mean it happens all the time, then you're right. There were 52 abortions performed on kids under the age of 14 in Ohio in 2020 alone.
It's just not, again, we could try to keep forcing that, but it's probably not a good idea, and it's probably not going to be a lasting solution, which is where we're at now. This will go back and forth ad infinitum. There'll always be legal loopholes. And
I don't know what he's babbling about there, but I want to point out that while we're waiting, that Las Vegas is lousy with right-wingers. I was attacked on Facebook by an alt-right Marilyn Monroe impersonator. Let me repeat the most Las Vegas thing that has ever come out of my mouth. I was attacked on Facebook by an alt-right Marilyn Monroe impersonator. I roasted her, defended myself, told a pretty good joke. She's a Marilyn Monroe impersonator. The joke involved sleeping pills. You would not believe the right-wing snowflake meltdown that ensued afterwards. They were online talking about how I needed to be blacklisted. And guess what? I have barely worked as a stand-up in this town in the past 3 years. You know, they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That only applies to people who leave Las Vegas. They had like 2 or 3 cancellations this month, and the month isn't even over yet. These guys, these right-wing comics, they're always talking about cancel culture. They know that cancel culture is real because they're the ones out there doing the canceling.
Somebody will be able to outlawyer somebody else. Kind of right. So, yeah, the question, and then you ask, the left, and they'll say, no, you should be able to put a railroad spike through a baby's head when it pops out.
Yeah, I never heard of a railroad spike being used never heard of a railroad spike being used to treat a miscarriage. I find it pretty bizarre that there were so many on the right who were claiming that this 10-year-old girl was lying. Here's how you know a 10-year-old is telling the truth about being raped. She's pregnant and she's 10.
As long as their toes aren't out, you can kill it. So we do have to find Patrick 3/5 compromise Melton. No.
3/5 compromise. Hey, did I ever tell you guys I'm bad at math? I'm really bad at math. That's why I don't have an associate's degree. If you want to get an associate's degree, it turns out you have to have 10 gabillion math credits. Now, I don't know if gabillion is an actual unit of measurement. I'm bad at math. But I do know this. I will probably never be the assistant manager of a Payless Shoes because I can't solve for n. But you know who's really good at math? Racist people. They used to say that black people were 3/5 of a person. So in order to calculate how many people were in their state, they had to take, say, 214,000 and divide it by 3/5. That's fractions. 214,000 divided by 3/5, that comes to about, I have no idea, because I'm bad at math. Do you know why I'm bad at math? Because I'm not a racist.
No. So I love it when people in the chat jump ahead of me and try to tell me what I'm saying. Again, I don't have any of the answers. I'm letting you know what's happening. So your solution is every woman who needs one needs to move to a state that supports it? Got it. You're an angry, angry man. I haven't said anything unreasonable.
You literally just said that abortion procedures are performed with railroad spikes, and you seem to be trying to make the case that a state should have the right to force 10-year-old girls into making babies.
At all. I'm on your side even, and you're mad. Like, you need to stop it, calm down, smoke a cigarette.
All right, you can play like you're the calm one. It's easy to do. But you're calmly talking out of your ass. And this idea that you're on our side, the idea, listen, you could say that you're pro-choice, but then you can't negate that by everything else that you say afterwards. This is the centrist move. I've seen this centrist strategy a lot lately. This is the we're objective, and everyone around us is crazy. Both sides are equally crazy. Well, that's impossible unless you have your thumb on the scale. Things aren't equal that way. Opposing viewpoints are not equal. All right? You have a thing called an ectopic pregnancy. That's when an egg explodes in a woman's tubes. The way to treat that, the way to prevent that is through the medical procedure known as abortion. If it's not treated in time, that egg explosion will cause the victim to bleed out. To suggest that someone has the right to have that treated with a medical procedure is not the same thing as saying that a state should have the right to force 10-year-old girls into making babies for them. Those two things are not equally insane.
And listen and be a part of a discussion. I never said my solution is this. I said there'll be ways to balance. First of all, is this the solution, dummy? To keep making it legal, making it federally illegal. Making it federally legal, making it federally... First of all, it's not federally illegal.
It's not federally illegal yet, but they're working toward that. And they're working fast. One way we can prevent that is by showing up and voting in this election, this upcoming election in Nevada. It's a very tight race, and voting blue doesn't sound sexy. But you know what's a lot less sexy? You guessed it. States forcing 10-year-old girls into making babies for them.
But if that's what you would like, that's where we shall go. Now, unfortunately for you, over 60% of this country is for some level of restriction on a ball.
For some reason, he can't seem to bring himself to say the word abortion. He's right. 61% of people believe in restrictions on abortion. That's because 61% of people support Roe v. Wade. That's what Roe v. Wade is. Regulated abortion procedures. That's a very clever reframing. I will have to give him credit for that. That's original. I haven't heard that one before. I have never heard someone take national support for Roe v. Wade and use it as an argument against Roe v. Wade. That's a brand new move. Unfortunately for you, not only do 61% of Americans support Roe v. Wade, when you ask them whether or not a state should be allowed to force a 10-year-old girl to make a baby, that number suddenly shoots up to 85%. So, 85% of Americans support some form of abortion. And that leaves 15% that's truly anti-abortion. And if you happen to know anyone among that 15%, anyone who is truly anti-abortion, do yourself a favor and keep your kids away from them.